Today we have Danielle with us. She has worked at two D2C brands, scaled up their influence marketing from scratch. So basically done huge campaigns, worked with so many influencers. So she knows all about how to brief creators so brands get most out of the collaboration. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about, but also other things too around influence marketing. So let's get started. I'd love to talk more about the briefings, why that is important, because I see so many brands failing on it, especially startups. And then we could talk a little about the events. I haven't, heard too much about the power of events, but I'd love to hear more about that. But now when you mentioned audience overlap.
Yeah. Good segue.
Yeah. It reminds me of our first talk when he used to work at Johnson Tall.
Mm-hmm.
And when he negotiated hard on the deal, but eventually we set everything up, and I mean you ran the whole team there, and then you moved on to Sunday Natural. You did also the whole team there, set up everything. So I think hearing more about briefs will be super, super interesting. But can you just tell me why?
Actually, at Rosenthal, I didn't run everything there. I had a really good team, so I ran the Berlin team. It was weird back then. We had it split up. But we had actually, looking back, we had a team of like superstars because we've all moved on now and we're all like, in our senior positions or team lead positions. And back then, like, I think I was probably still the most senior out of the positions. But looking back, I'm actually like, wow, you had a dream team there.
Yeah, true A team.
Yeah.
But it showed on the results too, like how fast the company grew from basically nothing when we started, and then now it's super, super big.
Yeah.
But can you, because we will obviously share this conversation with hopefully a lot of upcoming brands and maybe also mature brands. What is a brief?
Yeah.
Like what is a brief, in the influence marketing space, if you would summarize it?
Well, I think it's important also like for me, like a brief is also like two things, right? Because I think a lot of people just brief on like how they want the influencer to post, so all the different links, codes, or like even wording, etc. And then I think there's also product briefs, right? So that was something interesting that we ended up doing because it's so detailed, all the different products, and there were so many of them, and it's so technical and medical that we ended up actually every time like there was like a big new product or a big new product line, we actually had someone in the team. I mean, not every company has the capacity to, to have someone like that in the team, but I think the size of, that it was obviously doable. And so we had someone who was actually, she had other jobs in the team as well, but one of her expertise, she had a background in also like nutrition and stuff, so she was kind of more familiar with all the medical stuff as well. And so every time a new product came out, she would actually do a quick briefing, not only for influencers, but also for the team. So then we were able to like, okay, like read up, like say what a few things this could be for, like what are the key ingredients, like, I don't know, are there any, places or time of days that you should take this, or how often, or maybe like for a certain period of time? Is it more favorable for men or women or kids, etc.? So she would do this, and I think that also like helped inside the team to like sell it, So that's not always necessary in my opinion when you have like such a range of products. But I also think it's really good to have that just build, like even if you have like a skincare line with like, let's say even like 10 products, have a quick briefing for like even if you have it on your product page, like have something that you can like send out that's just like straight to the point, almost like a mini media kit. It's really nice, or even with like your top product,
Yeah.
And then you can always put that in your briefing as well. So it's like done, So this is why I'm saying there's kind of two things. So there's like a social media briefing and like a product briefing for me, which obviously most of the time they're sent together as one big briefing. as well. But I think like the product briefing is something that's really important as well. And I think what a lot of brands do is they put too many stipulations and on what, how, when, where, why an influencer should post. And I think you're kind of just, I mean, I understand like it's the same with everything. Every once in a while, you'll get a bad apple and maybe they didn't do such a great job, posting. And then maybe someone wants to come in and blame it on the briefing, but it's not always the case, because if it's a good influencer, if it's a good fit, it doesn't really matter like when they posted. I mean, like, of course, certain things can help, but if they're like actually excited about the product and they're able to convince their followers and show their followers like results, then it doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
I think also giving that flexibility and freedom, it also takes away from this like forced, forced sponsored ad, script.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the more you push that on an influencer, I think it's fair if you do want certain days, for launches. I mean, that's 100% fair. But I think like if you have long-standing partners and stuff, like I think being so strict on that is just also not the way, yeah.
What's strict? So do you have an example of the mistakes that was done? So
Yeah.
what's too strict?
So I think telling them that they have to post between like a really, again, unless it's for a specific launch and it's like, really important, then I can kind of understand and stuff. But if it's just kind of like a regular posting and maybe you have them booked a couple times a month, but I think like putting like a day and then a time frame each time that they have to post, that's already like the beginning, And then I think also like, saying like, please use these like keywords and stuff, as well. And I think like sometimes you can see like the influencer reading, they're reading the briefing while they're posting. And like, that's more my thing. Like, I think when it comes off so scripted, as you just said, I don't know. Those, I mean, you can just immediately like see.
Yeah, but I could just see myself like if I would get that brief, like use these 5 keywords.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to do it with my own style and everything.
Yeah.
I would always have these keywords in my head.
Yeah.
So it would be kind of like impossible to make it just seems natural. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's okay to say like have like, like words to describe it easy, you know what I mean? But it's also like you have to, I mean, at the end of the day, you are paying, you're usually paying. If you're not paying them, I mean, it's a different story, but you're also paying them to create, So I think it's a lot of times like they should find that connection. For example, if you want them to, take a magnesium or take the hyaluronic serum, like try to talk and negotiate them with like, hey, what do you, these are our ideas that we have, but like, which one of these would fit most to you, So like meeting in the middle, not just being like, hey, here's the storyline, do it out,
Yeah, making sure that they also are into the product. But how do
exactly.
Like, how did you do that? Like, how do you know because I feel like a good start is to know if they already love the product. That's makes everything easier. Like, how do you evaluate that before going for a creator? Like, do you go for the followers that already love you? Like, or how do you make them excited? Or how do you see that they are maybe just wanting the money? They kind of pretend to be excited about your product and just want the deal. And then like, this is like, how do you kind of see all that and evaluate that?
I think, so best case scenario, they posted for you randomly already, right? And you just caught it. Like that's best case scenario. Or you see that they follow you. I mean, not follow, like personally, but follow the brand,
Right.
That's best case. And that's already like, signs of hope. I think one of the things when it's especially like managers, it's the like, oh, send the product, then we'll find a date. You're like, okay, geez, like no foreplay, and I think that's one of the things when it's like, just send the product and we'll post it, that's kind of for me, like, it doesn't mean like not necessarily that the influencer won't convert, that's kind of sadly the thing, you know, but because there are communities that are just so well, you know, well knit, and they're really tight. But I think also like that relationship with the product will also only last so long too. You know what I mean? If it's not really like a organic or authentic relationship, like that has a time limit.
Yeah.
So I think like a really quick, sort of like rough and dirty, like, hey, send me the product, this kind of thing is always kind of a sign of like, okay, hey, they just kind of want to like post and get done with it and then take a check, you know? I always like when managers are like, hey, these are the products like that our influencer chose. Like I always like, that's always like a really nice sign for me. And then they're like, yeah, she wants to test the product for like at least like 2 or 3 weeks, you know, and then like we'll get back to you once, you know. For me, that I always really like that, and that's something I can on the influencer manager side that I can really like appreciate and respect as well.
Yeah, totally. And I'm curious to know, whenever you get, especially with these paid collabs, you get the content, everything before they're gonna post, and you kind of approve it. Have it ever happened that you just said, I know this won't work, like, let's just skip the whole collab? And if yes, if that happened, like, how do you evaluate or determine, like what do you see? What's the gut feeling when you see the content that this is not authentic, this is not real? Like, what kind of key things do you need to look at? Or
So I never was a fan of like pre-approving content. It is sometimes necessary because exactly the instances that you're saying. But I think especially if you're working with smaller creators, and especially for brands like, like or something, when you had like cooking channels, like you don't need to see their recipe before. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like you've seen their channel, you worked with them and stuff. Like I was definitely not someone who was like approving every little thing, because I just think, at some point you need to trust the creators that you're working with as well. But of course, for some bigger influencers, or like new influencers, and especially if they're promoting something that you have to be a bit more careful, like with health claims and this kind of stuff, then of course, you want to make sure to like make sure that they're not, proclaiming that it, there's, things that it doesn't, or this kind of stuff. So
right.
I've definitely had that case where we've had to, just for more health claiming reasons, that we've had to, or even when beauty and stuff, like, when it's too claiming, then I think that's something that obviously has to kind of be reworked as well. Yeah.
And you mentioned this, like you work with, especially, I think you guys worked a lot with smaller profiles, but also the bigger ones.
Yeah.
How, when it comes to them briefs, is it the same brief for smaller ones and bigger ones? And also, how do you get the smaller ones to post and do everything organic when you do the conversation with them? Because you don't want to start going back and forth with like 10 emails with just someone that is small. Like, what's the structure there?
We actually had, I had 2 different sort of briefing contracts made. So we had like an extensive one for bigger deals, and then for kind of like smaller ones who, or especially like for partners and stuff, like we'd have like a bit, because the thing is, like, a lot of the nano influencers, they're so much more engaged with your brand, and they've probably been using your product for years. Like, you don't need to really, brief them. They know you're going to show the products they like. They can say, this is when I take my vitamin D. This is when I use my, I don't know, maca powder or whatever, So they're like pros almost, They are pros. And as far as like content, tracking the content, I mean, we have, obviously there's some tools that we could always use, but also like since we were managing them in a customized sheet, also like at the end of the month you can see in the BI, like if someone hasn't like made any sales, if you're, depending on how you're tracking, which we were, you generally track either through code or through a link. So, so if you're seeing that they haven't posted or that they haven't made any revenue, that's kind of like a sign, so it's like kind of you tell, and then you can go back and see if they posted. But a lot of times, like our nanos would just like send us their content anyways. Like that really wasn't a big issue.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I've seen so many, like, I don't know if this is working anymore.
Yeah.
But I've seen email drafts where the first email is kind of the social brief, if you can call it that, or like how they should post.
Yeah.
That's the first email. Like this, if you want to work with us, you get these products for free. This is 1, 2, 3 step. We want stories. We want to say, whatever, the brief is. Is that something that brands can still do, or does it need to be more like, here, do you want free products? Like no strings attached. I just love to hear your feedback. And if you want to post, like.
Well, I think it depends on what stage you're at. So I think it depends on what stage you're at. Because obviously in the beginning, when no one knows your brand, you have to maybe swallow your pride a little bit and, just go after kind of anything that's biting. And then I think once you kind of like work your brand a little bit more to the forefront, then I think you can start to be kind of like, like we'd send you these products. And then like, once you, decide that you like them, then this is what we would, either expect or what we would like to come to agreement. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense now what I'm thinking about it. Like if you are established, like I guess it's easy to determine.
Best scenario, you're not doing any outreach acquisition at all.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're looking for a really, a campaign or something, Women's Day, you want to book, Serena Williams. This is obviously Serena Williams. Generally speaking, unless she's just, I don't know, you get lucky and she's obsessed with your brand and her minute, that's for you. But generally speaking, athletes and people of that kind of level, you have to go after. But I think like best case scenario is like you're also getting requests for Instagram, like even influencers writing directly on Instagram inbound, exactly. Or like you have a page set up for influencers to write you, and then you guys just review, and then you kind of source here and there for maybe some more specialty people.
Yeah. That's also, so before we jump into talking a little bit more about events, I'm just curious to hear, you worked for a long time now with influencers. Have you seen any patterns like on an influencer that if they have this metric or if they talk like this or whatever, like when you evaluate an influencer, have you seen any patterns if they are potentially a sales converter or some that really will work out? Have you seen any signs or like any specific community?
It's changed, right, over time now. So at first you were looking at the posts and you were looking just at engagement, and then stories came out, and then you were looking at the story views. And then Reels came out, and then that added something, different. So you had checking out also kind of, the same metrics as obviously posts and stuff. And then, they established the link. So then you were looking at link clicks. And I think now it's kind of evolving to thread, like, so saying like, how many people do you have signed up in your threads, because I think that's a really good sign to see how many people are actually in their,
loyal, like the.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
So
I know.
I think it's kind of, the line is always moving. But yeah, but even if someone had, all those numbers are right, there's no guarantee that it's gonna convert, So, and I think this is where it's so tricky, because maybe you have a sports player and maybe for some reason in this sports player, like the sports player's demographic, like they sell, beauty really well. And then you could go to another sports player account and that it doesn't convert at all. Even if they have the same metrics and stuff, there's still like, let's say, nano demographics inside of their demographic, where I think that's, even if, like scope, you break it down and stuff, but I think even then, it's difficult because, you never really know who's behind the account. And obviously with, like the fake accounts and stuff, like, yeah, AI makes it even more difficult. It seems like that would be helping, but yeah, so I think just trying to also look at which brands they've you guys have how many times they've collaborated with
Yeah.
a company, right? And I think that's a great sign.
Yeah.
So if you look at over a span of a year and they've worked with, I don't know, 4 brands consistently, like 4 or 5 times, like that should be a good sign,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, tell me more about the influencer events. You mentioned it. I don't know too much about it. So I'd love to hear just like, yeah, what's your experience from it, and why would you promote the power of events?
I just think like during Corona, everything was paused, rightfully so. I mean, and then I think, it was like 2 years of just being inside, no PR events, everything put on, budget is all put on online marketing, no offline. I even think like, like out of home has gotten bigger again, so like billboards and everything. And I noticed it like at our first event that we did, and it was kind of like, it was at the end of a summer, so I think it was maybe we had kind of another small Corona in that winter. I can't remember anymore. It feels like 10 years. And I just remember like people like not frothing out at the mouth, but like you know what I mean, just to like be out and be social and like like be at it again. You could feel it. It was yeah. It was in the air, and especially for companies that, who have a strong like female demographic. I think it's always great, for, things like Women's Day. That was the big thing that I did, and I mean, that's something obviously I feel like very connected to and I was very passionate about as well. And I think these are just like great moments to like, it's like a 2-for-1 in a sense, you get to also like connect with your influencers, or a 5-for-1 for that matter. You get to connect with your influencers. You get to, celebrate the females who are working at your company. You get to highlight even potential non-influencer women. Like, for example, we had speakers, we also had influencer speakers, but we also just had like business women, or just even some more political people there. So you can just like highlight so many things, in one event. And also obviously like product launches as well, like not to forget the actual product. But I think it's encompassing. It's not even just influencer, and like I said, I just think it's a great way to actually see your influencers face to face. That does do something. Like when they can see you, when they can talk to you, when they have like a personal connection to you, I feel like it breaks a little bit of that barrier, and you guys can have like a little bit more of a more palpable connection, so yeah, and I think it is just going to get like more and more important, obviously, like that you end up needing your influencers, because this is, I think, nowadays with like in the digital world, like everything can be done online, and I think the last thing, I mean, maybe you could make it with AI, but the last thing is really like seeing the influencer and someone from your brand together, like if they're together, then you're like, okay, like that is a sign that this is like not just, like a one-off or like, just a random collaboration or something like this. I think this is also something to show more authenticity with your...
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything is about relationships.
Yeah.
Like that's key, especially in influencer marketing. You forget it's a human on the other side, like they will promote your brand. It's not a meta campaign they're going to run for 4 weeks and you put a budget. So I definitely think like your key ambassadors, influencer people, whatever you call them, just meeting them, introduce them to products before everyone else, get their feedback, just
Yeah.
making sure that they really love you, I think is great.
Social, right?
But also, I think you will get in, like, if, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like, but what you can expect also as, like, if you look at the metrics, like, you probably will get better deals, better collabs with a better setup.
So the awareness after,
Yeah.
like, people were like, why didn't I get invited? You know, like, I was like, oh, okay, like, we're at that level. Like, that's great. Like, I mean, I was like, sorry, but, you know, but it's also like great because there's also a certain fear that comes with events that, you know, maybe, I mean, people are not going to arrive or they're not, you know, they're going to say, nah, like, you know, but I think in the end, if you are able to put something really fun and exciting together, then I think, you know, everyone will want a piece of it. So
Yeah, for sure. It's hard. It must be hard to coordinate it.
that was, yeah. We did everything in house. So it definitely, you definitely need some extra hands on board, which I had in my team. But yeah, I think it's a lot of stress, but in the end, it's also amazing because it's like, once it's done, it's done. And then you get to see all the results that come from it, you know, like after the event, it was like social coming to me saying like, wow, you know, we had so many things that we could repost. We gained followers. I had, you know, online coming to me, performance coming to me and being like, wow, like the traffic yesterday, you know, was crazy on the you know, on our website. And so you hear, and then, you know, you see the LinkedIn and everything. So you get it from all angles. So it's also like such an achievement afterwards that's different from your sort of normal like day to day as well. So
Yeah. What would you recommend for brands out there? Like how many times? Like what's, like obviously maybe 1 or 2 times maybe per year, or and what should the setup be? Should it only be about the products, or
I
can it
think
be
it's
just
so dependent on the product. So I mean, like I said, for people who have a female demographic, I would definitely focus on a Women's Day event. That is your audience. Focus on them. You know, like give them the attention. You know, give them the due. You know that they deserve. So and also like if I think, I mean, unless you're a really specific brand, summer is such a difficult time to do an event, and I would try to win it at all costs. Because there's always influencers on vacation, with scheduling, you know, and stuff. So if you do want to do a summer event, I would do it at the end of May, early June, or more so towards like September. I would avoid really so like end of June, July, August, if possible. Just because like it's such a tricky time to schedule. But I think like at least like I think like 2 events is good, you know, and then I mean start with 1 and then see how that goes, you know, for your company. But I think it's good to at least do like 2 events a year. And they don't need to be bigger. Like you know, I also did like a small a little holiday event with influencers and stuff. Way, you know, like probably a tenth of the budget, you know, or even less. In a cooking studio, just baking like Christmas cookies and stuff as well, you know. And that's the great thing, if like you have a great office, you can also just avoid location costs.
yeah.
Well, I always say like invest in a nice like room, invest in a nice like office, because this is where like you will save costs. Like if you have a nice setup, you don't have to rent a location every time. So if you have a good room, you know, like make it pretty, make it nice, and then you can also do you know, some easy like yoga meditation events, or
Yep.
I don't know, just depending on what your product is, obviously. But yeah, you could, you know, do some also nice events at the office, and yeah, and I think it's always also nice, you know, when the influencer comes to the office as well, and you know, you can show them the products, like, you know, in person, and they can kind of see also like who's working there and stuff. I always think like that's kind of nice as well.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, you've seen the trend too with all the pop-up stores.
Yeah.
Having a store for a month or even just a weekend, I can really see, like, you know, you get the sales, you get show the product, you can invite other people, and you usually have like a VIP line, like all that. Yeah. It's kind of what you just talked about. Like, it's actually an event, so it cannot.
Yeah, exactly.
A pop-up store. But cool. This was super interesting, especially with the briefs. I think that one is tricky for for all brands, especially startups. Like they don't even know how to start writing and if they should demand or not. So I think a lot of insights came out there.
Yeah.
And also we need to make sure that more and more brands are doing events and really building a relationship with them. I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else you would like to add? Like things you've thought about, like, oh, everyone should just think about this or do this.
I think, I mean, be nice to your influencer managers, you know. I think you always hear about social media managers on LinkedIn, but no one ever talks about the influencer managers and, you know, answering emails on the weekend and stuff. And so just, you know, I just remember there's a person behind there.
Yeah,
and they're doing the best they can. So.
Yeah, it's a tough job. I had a call with an interview with another expert earlier today. We talked about the role itself, and that it's kind of like a sales role in a way, like a sales job, and it's not too much about like social media. It's more about getting deals in, converting, yeah, and like convincing influencers to really want to work for them, getting good deals, all that, and also see the sales and awareness and traction and everything.
It's tricky because I think some things that people don't think about is like, as an influencer manager, like you are your own brand too, you know? So like, I mean, if you're getting pushed behind the scene to make a deal and you know, and this is like, it's also like, you're like, well, if I like, you know, move on at one point, like I want to make sure I like have a good connection with this, you know, influencer or with the management and stuff. And like, you know, so I think it's always like a balance also to, you know, obviously do the best you can to negotiate while still also like staying cordial and, you know, trying to, you know, to be the nicest that you can in that moment as well.
For sure. This was a great talk. This was an awesome talk.